Hello and welcome to the 30k channel, a channel dedicated to games set in the Horus Heresy. And today we have a game that I've very much been looking forward to, something a little bit different. We have no Astartes, we have the Mechanicum of the Ordo Reductor and the forces of the Solar Auxilia. And in the 35-degree heat today, when Boris has been made leader of our country, David has decided we're once again going to war on a snow table.
Yeah.
So appropriate as usual, mate.
It's so hot outside. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening. James and I are absolutely baking. And I thought, what better way to celebrate the inauguration of our, well, it's not really inauguration, but the election of our new Prime Minister and the heat. There's heat waves in France and Spain at the moment. And I can tell you, I am wet through.
Oh, absolutely. I am sweating buckets.
It's not nice. So I thought it's got to be a snow table today. And I think as well, it worked really well with the kind of the brighter red of the Mechanicum and the deeper red and green of the Solar, and it really made both armies stand out. So that's what I went with.
Yes, yeah, that's it. And today we are playing standard mission. It's Shatter Strike, which I think is going to be very interesting because, as you can probably see, both of these armies are very heavily armoured. They're both mechanised, and it'd be very interesting to see the vehicles of the Solars take on the vehicles of the Ordo Reductor. There's a lot of flare shields here today, so that should be very interesting. And it's all about getting into the opposing deployment zone, of course, with Shatter Strike. There's also Slay the Warlord and Attrition, and there's Price of Failure, because today we both have a Lord of War.
We do, yeah. So channel first is the Styrics. Never seen one of these before, or Styrex, however you want to pronounce it. I'm going to say Styrics. No, we've seen Stormblade.
Yeah.
But we've never seen two Infernus before, Malcador Infernus.
No, that's it. Well, yeah, you'd have every right to be sceptical of seeing two Malcador Infernus before when they were super heavies. Not quite so bad now that they're normal tanks. You can shake them, you can stun them, you can destroy their weapons. So, I wouldn't have dreamed of taking two before. Now, we'll give it a go.
But not to worry though, because virtually, other than the Thalax, every single one of the Mechanicum will be in an armoured transport, and all of the Mechanicum vehicles have flare shields, as do the Solar Auxilia. Yeah, all the Dracosans do. Yeah, the Malcadors and the Stormblade, they're without. But yeah, these are very, very durable vehicles. They've also got a lot of hull points. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting game of manoeuvre, I think. Yeah, as James just mentioned, we are going to try and outmaneuver each other to get some side armour shots to mitigate those flare shields. And obviously, don't forget, a flare shield with a blast template is -2 to its strength. A standard shot like a las cannon or an auto cannon is -1. So, you know, James, you've got a lot of strength 10 demolisher cannons. Yeah, that's it. They look very scary, but they can only glance the front of Triaros and Macrocarid. Yeah. So that's going to go a long way to really, really helping to stave off those shots. Yeah, I think this game will be a bit of a wacky racers race to each other's deployment zone to then disgorge the troops. But obviously, when the troops come out, that's where the weapons on both sides will really start to pick apart the infantry. So the mission does favour the Mechanicum ever so slightly because in an Ordo Reductor list, all of the tanks are scoring, which will really help. So each tank's worth 2 victory points in enemy's deployment zone. Excuse me, but James's are all denial as well. So, you know, I think it's going to be a tricky game, but it's going to be quite a thrilling game, I think. I think so, yeah. I think we're quite evenly matched. If we can get across the table, it could be very close in terms of victory points. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I'm really interested to see how the Styrics gets on as well. It's been upgraded to have the Hecaton Siege Claw and the Volkite weaponry that neither James and I can pronounce. We did have a go, didn't we? Yeah, we did, yeah. But so, we struggled a bit. Yeah, please, if you want to comment, put it in phonetically. Yeah, we don't want to upset you guys. We know how particular you are about your pronunciation of things. So, yeah, we don't want to upset you guys. So we're just going to go with the Volkite weapon on the Styrics. Play it safe. Yeah, the Volkite of Doom. The Volkite of Doom. Let's go with that. All right, shall we take a look at these lists? Let's do it. 3,000 points of Mechanicum, running the Matrix of Ruin Force Organizational chart, the Unfettered Wrath of the Machine, Led by an Archmados Reductor, his Warlord trait is Perfected Targeting. Leading the Reductor is an Archmados Reductor. He's been equipped with 2 Power Fists, a Rad Cleanser, Cyber Familiar, Machinator Ray, an Abeyant. He's also accompanied by 2 Cyber Ocularis and has the Jin Skyn ability. Elite's choice is a Myrmidon Secutor unit. They are equipped with 3 Twin Phase Plasma Thusils and are equipped with Power Axes. The first and second troops choice are 2 cohorts of Thalax, each with 6 Thalax. They've been upgraded to take the Ferox special rule and are all equipped with Melter Bombs. The third and final troops choice is a 20-man squad of Secretary Peltast Phalanx. They are from Book 7. There is 19 Radium Carbines in the squad, and the Alpha is equipped with a Radium Pistol and a Power Sword. Their dedicated transport is a Triaris Armoured Conveyor, and that's been equipped to take extra armour. Thanks to the Matrix of Ruin Force Organisational chart, this Mechanicum army is allowed to take 4 heavy support slots. The first and second are filled out by 2 Cryos Venators. The third heavy support choice is filled with a Macrocarried Explorator. It's been equipped with 2 Radiation Engines and a Flare Shield. The final heavy support choice is 5 Myrmidon Destructors, all equipped with Power Fists and Volkite Culverins, and their dedicated transport is a Triaris Armoured Conveyor, equipped with extra armour. Lord of War choice for this Ordo Reductor army is a Mechanicum Indentured Knight Styrax. It's equipped with a Hecaton Siege Claw and a twin-linked Rad Cleanser. It also has the Volkite of Doom weapon on its right arm.
3,000 points of Solar Auxilia, led by a Lord Marshal with the Uncanny Survivor Warlord trait. This detachment contains a fortification choice, which is an Aegis defence line. The Solar Auxilia are led by a Legate Commander, who is a Lord Marshal. He has a Mastercrafted Paragon Blade, an Archaeotech Pistol, Digital Lasers, an Iron Halo, a Cyber Familiar, Artificer Armour, Melter Bombs, and a Grav Wave Generator. The Solar Auxilia's second HQ choice is an Auxilia Tactical Command Section. They've been upgraded to have a Melter Gun and a Grenade Launcher. The Strategos has his Orbital Bombardment and a Cognis Signum. They also have a Nuncio Vox and a Vexilla. And as a dedicated transport, they have a Dracosan Armoured Transport with a Demolisher Cannon and a Flare Shield. The third HQ choice for the Solar Auxilia is an Auxilia Tank Commander. He has the Tank Hunter's special rule, and he is concealed deep in the bowels of the Auxilia's Lord of War choice, which is a Stormblade Super Heavy Tank. This detachment's first elite choice are the Household Retinue of the Lord Marshal. They are a Velataris Storm Section 10 strong. They all have Power Axes and Shroud Bombs, and they have a dedicated transport in the form of a Dracosan Armoured Transport with a Twin-Link Las Cannon and a Flare Shield. The second elite choice for the Solar Auxilia is an Engine Seer Auxilia. There are 2 Adepts with Power Axes, Power Armour and Servo Arms, and 8 Servo Automata. They all have Grenade Launchers. The Solar Auxilia have 2 troops choices. They are both identical. They are Velataris Storm Sections. Both are 10 strong. They have Volkite Chargers. Their primes both have Power Fists. And they are both mounted in Dracosan Armoured Transports, which have Demolisher Cannons, Flare Shields and extra armour. The Solar Auxilia have a single fast attack choice, which is a 3 strong Tarantula Sentry Gun Battery. All 3 Tarantulas have Twin-Link Las Cannon. The Solar Auxilia have 2 heavy support choices. Both are Malcator Infernus Special Weapons Tanks. Both have chemical ammunition and Las Cannon sponsons. Solar Auxilia, movement phase turn 1, and just because they have seized the initiative, that does not mean that the cagey Solar Auxilia have surged forward. In fact, only the 3 Dracosan armour transports in the centre have rumbled forwards a few inches just to bring their demolisher cannons in range of the Knight Styrics. The Stormblade has just pivoted on the spot to bring its plasma blast gun into arc to try and take on the Thalax and the Malcador Infernus. They have the same plan with their massive chemical flamers. Everything else has held position, preparing to give fire. Solar Auxilia shooting phase turn 1, and the phase had quite a successful opening for the Solus as the tank commander commanded his gunner to set the Stormblade's plasma blast gun to maximal fire. He managed to land it dead centre on the Thalax in this building, evaporating 3 of them. 3 of them passed their cover saves. Then the heavy bolter opened fire, managed to inflict another wound. Now we move on, as these beleaguered Thalax now have to face the fire of the Malcadors as well. The first Malcador Infernus opened fire with a shot from one of its las cannon, managing to inflict another wound on the beleaguered Thalax, and then unleashed a gout of chemicals from its main weapon, which inflicted another 2 wounds. The second Malcador opened fire with its chemical ammunition, hosing the last 2 Thalax in this building, but unfortunately rolled a double 1-2 wound, and the fact that its las cannon sponsons have no line of sight means that its fire has been completely ineffectual. The disappointment continues for the Solar Auxilia as the 3 Dracosans in the centre belched forth 3 demolisher shells which all pounded into the front of the Knight Styrics. 2 of them managed to inflict glancing hits despite the ionic flare shield, but unfortunately the flare shield still saved them with its 4+ invulnerable. No damage. Between them, the Tarantulas and the Dracosan with its twin-link las cannon managed to get 3 hits on the front of the Triaros armoured conveyor, but unfortunately the flare shield held firm and all of the las cannon shots bounced harmlessly off. To round off the Solar Auxilia's first turn, the Thalax over in the fart building. They managed to pass their morale check despite taking quite a hammering, but as we expected, the Mechanicum line of armour has proven incredibly resilient to the Solar Auxilia's opening salvo. No damage caused as yet, that's disappointing, and we're bracing for the counter-attack of the Auto-Reductor.
Mechanicum turn 1 movement. I think Mechanicum have got away quite nicely, to be honest with you, only losing a few Thalax. On the left-hand side, though, the Mechanicum have made a very aggressive move. Our plan is to try and get rid of this unit with Haywire, because that will wreck one of the vehicles or the Knight a turn. So we need to get rid of that. We're going to try and focus fire on that as much as we can. The Knight has come through that little gap there. I'm not 100% sure what we're going to do with it. We're definitely going to shoot into the Tech Priest unit, and then maybe we'll try and assault in the following turn. The Macro Carrid has just followed up in support, going to get its Mauler bolt cannon. It did move 12, but it can still snap shoot it, and it is twin link, so we'll give that a whirl. The Triaris on the right-hand side has gone forward, and the Kraus Venator behind it has just brought its weapon to bear at that Stormblade. It'd be nice to get a couple of hull points off it. And then finally, the Thalax have just moved forward 6 inches. Thanks to Walkers in Ruin, they're ignoring all the difficult terrain. They're just walking through it. So that's really good news. I have no doubt that James will target them in the next turn, but at least it's distracting the firepower of those tanks. They will make a thrust move and just advance forward as much as we can. We need a little bit of luck, so let's see what happens. Mechanicum, turn 1 shooting. The Triaris on the right-hand side here fired its twin-link Mauler bolt cannon into the Engineer squad. They did go to ground, which is brilliant news. They will be snap shooting next turn. Got 1 hit and 1 wound, but the cover save was made. The Kraus Venator fired its 4 shots into the Tarantulas. Got 2 hits, 1 wound, but again, the cover save was made. The Styrics fired its Graviton gun over on the left-hand side Dracosan there to cover the 2 Dracosan, but the shot did scatter and only clipped the left-hand side Dracosan and caused a glancing hit. The Styrics then fired its large Volkite of Doom at the Tarantulas. So 5 shots, 3 hits, and managed to strip 2 wounds, killing the first tarantula, or destroying it rather, and putting a wound on the second one. So that was a good result, stripping those las cannon shots coming in at the Mechanicum. The macro carried, using Power of the Machine Spirit, did try to fire its Mauler bolt cannon at the engine seer squad there, but was out by an inch. So that was a little bit unfortunate, as it did have a little bit more ground to cover behind the back of the Styrics. But never mind. The Cryos Venator then opened up with its 4 shots into the front of the Stormblade, got 3 hits, but despite ordnance, only 1 glancing hit was caused. Finally, the Triaros went flat out towards the Dracosan, figuring that it's probably better to get as close as we can to disgorge the troops next turn. But we also might try for a ram next turn as well. So we'll see what happens there. In the shooting phase, the Thalax ran 3 inches for the first unit and 2 inches from the second unit. I then also combined the assault phase and did their thrust move, with the unit in the foreground here getting an additional 5 and the unit over there getting an additional 6. So they have come out. We're just trying to draw the fire of those Malcadors. We know we're going to lose them, so we might as well deflect the firepower for a little bit more time. Other than that, a reasonably successful turn. Glad to get rid of the las cannons and cause a whole point on the Stormblade, but let's see what happens in the next turn.
Solar Auxilia movement phase turn 2, and the Solars are still being very cagey indeed. They know their objective is to advance across the table, but they are clearly intimidated by this wall of Mechanicum armour coming at them, and the fact that their fire is having no effect. But the Malcadors have spun around. They are determined to finish off the Thalax moving through the ruins. Meanwhile, the tank commander in the Stormblade has moved to bring his plasma blast gun to bear on the Knight Styrex. In the centre, the 3 Dracosans have actually pulled back. They are in range with their demolisher cannons. They're just trying to keep distance and give fire. The engine seer Auxilia went to ground, but they still intend to fire some haywire shots into the Knight as well. And the Lord Marshal and his Velataris household section in their Dracosan have not disembarked. They've just spun round to add the fire of their twin-link las cannon as well. Meanwhile, the 2 Tarantulas, they have to fire at the nearest vehicle, which is the Triaros in front of them. The Solars are hoping for a good round of fire here. Solar Auxilia shooting phase turn 2, and the phase opened with the 2 remaining Tarantulas getting 2 hits on the front of the Triaros, but once again the flare shield foiled their shots, no damage. In the centre, the Velataris troopers in these Dracosans are beginning to panic. 3 more demolisher shells smashed into the front of the Knight Styrex, but could do no damage. As the smoke cleared, the Knight is still striding towards them. The Lord Marshal commanded his Dracosan to add the firepower of its twin-link las cannon against the Knight Styrex as well, but despite being twin-linked, could not hit. The engine seers commanded their servitors to open fire upon the Knight Styrex, but they're still in self-preservation mode, having gone to ground last turn. They still managed 2 hits and 2 glances on the Knight, but its ionic flare shield saved 1. Nevertheless, that is at least 1 whole point that the Solar Auxilia have finally managed to put on the Knight Styrex. The tank commander in the Stormblade once again opted for maximal fire on his plasma blast gun, managing to hit the Knight Styrex, and the macro carried as well was caught in the blast. Despite him having tank hunters, the Knight Styrex strode through the plasma blast unharmed. Not even a glancing hit, but at least a glancing hit was inflicted on the macro carried, following behind the Knight. Finally, a good result from the Solar Auxilia as the 2 Malcadors open fire with their chem ammunition, managing to melt 2 Thalax and inflict 2 more wounds on another one from the squad that was advancing through the ruins. Sadly, the las cannon didn't do anything, but it was enough to send the Thalax into retreat. And that, with no assaults, brings Solar Auxilia turn 2 to a close, and the Solars are getting very worried. Their fire is having virtually no effect, and the Mechanicum are closing in.
Mechanicum turn 2 movement phase. At the start of the phase, this Thalax unit passed their leadership test and have moved 3 inches, so that is good news. The 2 remaining Thalax on the right-hand side flank here have moved forward 6 inches. They are going to run and then use their thrust moves to get deep into the Solar Auxilia lines. The Cryos Venator has moved across 12 inches and is lining up a side armour shot on that Stormblade. The Triaros did an amazing ram attack on the Stormblade, which we will resolve at the end of the phase. The Styrics moved a full 12 inches, eyeing up one of the Dracosan. I'm probably assuming that I'll get tied up in combat in the next couple of turns from the infantry, but they can't charge on the turn they get out. So that will help the Mechanicum a little bit. The Macrocarad moved forward 12 inches, and his plan is to use Machine Spirit and wipe out that Haywire unit. Also, the Triaros on this side moved up, disgorged the Destructors, and they will try and take out that unit, with the Cryos Venator in support, eyeing up the Tarantula. So we're just trying to take out multiple units and give the Solar Auxilia something to think about. Resolving the ram attack against the Triaros Armoured Conveyor and the Solar Auxilia Stormblade. The Triaros went in with a Strength 9 attack, but failed to penetrate the Stormblade's armour. But thanks to the Shock Prowl, it managed a glancing hit, so reducing the Stormblade down by a whole point. The Stormblade then did a ram attack back, managed to pen the front armour of the Triaros, whole point, and a shaken result, so not too bad. Mechanicum turned to shooting phase. The Triaros fired at the Tarantulas, just trying to reduce the firepower coming back at the Solar. Got 2 hits and 2 wounds. One was saved, one wasn't, and that was enough to take one of the wounds off the final Tarantula, leaving 1 platform left. The Myrmidon Destructors unleashed their Volkites at the Tech Adepts and their Servitors behind the Aegis defense lines. 20 shots went in with preferred enemy, got 19 hits in the end and 19 wounds, and that was enough to take 5 of those Haywire grenade launchers and Adept out of that squad. The Triaros then fired one of the Volkite Sentinels and the Mauler Bolt Cannon onto the squad as well, but the unit elected to go to ground, getting a 2-up cover save. So there was only 4 models left in that squad. Really, really important to reduce the firepower from there. They are now snap shooting in the next turn. Quite a good result. The Macrocarad Explorator fired its 2 irradiation engines at the rest of the Servitors and the Tech Adept. Its Fleshbane ignores cover, and it wipes the squad, which was really great news. So that removes that threat from the side of the board. The Mauler Bolt Cannon then fired into the last remaining Tarantula, got 2 hits and 1 wound. The cover save was failed, and that left the Sentinel on 1 final wound. So a reasonable result from this side of the board. We now need to deal with the Dracosan and the Stormblade. The Styrics then fired its Graviton gun into the on the left-hand side Dracosan, clipping both of them, but rolling for Haywire. I unfortunately rolled 2 1s, which was just brilliant. And then the Volkite Weapon of Doom then fired into the side armour of the Stormblade. 5 shots, 3 hits, got 1 glance and 1 penetrating hit on that Stormblade, which has now lost a total of 4 hull points. I would imagine the Styrics will try and charge the Dracosan that it targeted with the Graviton gun. The Cryos Venator then fired 4 shots at the side of the Stormblade, only managed to hit once, rolling 2 1s and a 2, which was just unreal. The Ordnance shot managed to glance the side armour of the Stormblade, and that put another hull point on it, so it's now been reduced by 5 hull points. The plucky Mechanicum Thalax then tried their lightning guns into the side of the Stormblade, got 2 hits, but needed a 6 to glance, but unfortunately failed. Mechanicum turned to assault phase. The Styrics unfortunately failed a 9-inch charge against the leftmost Dracosan, rolling an 8. It was only an inch out. What a shame. On the right-hand side of the board, the Thalax on the left-hand side here thrust forward 5 inches over the barricade to try and play around with the line of fire from the Malcador Infernus. And then this squad here moved a whopping 11 inches into the Solar Auxilia deployment zone. I think on the whole, a reasonable turn for the Mechanicum. Would have been nice to have got a charge off with the Styrics, but we've just now got to brave the firepower coming back at us.
Solar Auxilia turn 3, and seeing that his army is in dire straits, the Lord Marshal has led his household troops from their Dracosan. They are now manning the barricades, but with so many Mechanicum units closing in, things are looking grim for them. Their Dracosan, meanwhile, has drawn a line of sight once again on the Styrex. In the centre, the 3 Dracosans have nowhere to go. They are just praying that their demolishers can have some effect on the knight, and the tank commander in the Stormblade has backed off as well. He is going to try to target the knight as well. Meanwhile, the 2 Malcadors, they are still on duty on this flank to try and drive back the Thalax, but at the moment the Mechanicum have so many scoring units advancing on the Solar's deployment zone. The Solars do not know how they're going to stop even half of them, but we shall see as we go into their 3rd shooting phase. Solar Auxilia shooting phase turn 3, and the Tarantula once again open fire on the Triaros directly in front of it. Hit again, and once again the las cannon beam bounced harmlessly off of the flare shield. Meanwhile, the Dracosan, with its twin-link las cannon, managed to get a hit on the side of the Knight's Styrex, and its shield is to the front. It was quite an opportunity, but failed to penetrate with the roll of a 2. In the centre, the Dracosans cannot believe their luck, as once again they managed to slam 3 demolisher shells into the front of the Knight's Styrex. This time they managed 2 penetrating hits, despite the flare effect, but the 4+ invulnerable save saved both of them, and it looks like a grim end is approaching for the Veletaris sections in their armoured transports in the centre. The tank commander once again fired maximum power on his Plasma Blast Gun, managed to get a penetrating hit on the Knight's Styrex, but once again the 4+ invulnerable was successful. The Knight has only lost 1 hull point during its march up the table, and he looks like he's going to plough into the centre of the Solars. The misery for the Solar Auxilia continues as both of the Malcadors target the 2 Thalax that were approaching with all of their weapons, but they only managed to take out the front Thalax. There is still 1 left. That has not been a very good round so far, but we're hoping the Lord Marshal can save it right there back down the other end with his Archaeotech pistol and his household troops las pistols. Bringing this disastrous shooting phase to an end, the Veletaris household troopers managed to get plenty of hits with their las pistols on the Myrmidon destructors. Unsurprisingly needed 6s to wound, did no wounds at all, but at least the Lord Marshal managed to inflict a wound on one of the Myrmidons with a shot from his Archaeotech pistol. That is the end of Solar Auxilia turn 3. Their massed fire has had very little effect on the approaching Mechanicum. They are preparing to reap the whirlwind.
Mechanicum, turn 3 movement. The Triaros has moved up in a bid to take out that Tarantula and then move into the Solar Auxilia deployment zone. The Destructors have moved forward 6 inches. They will shoot the Velatari with power axes and then charge them, hopefully killing the Legate commander. The Venator has just moved forward a full 12 inches. It's probably going to target one of the Dracosan if we can. The Macrocarad Explorator moved forward 6 inches. I debated about getting the units out inside, but I'm just going to sit tight for now. Going to suffer a side armor shot from that Dracosan with a twin-link las, but there you go. The Triaros on the right here did another ram attack against the Stormblade. The Knight Styrex cannot get into base contact, where it's very tight with the Stormblade, so it might just have to go after one of the Dracosan. The Thalax, lone Thalax on his own, has advanced forward. He will shoot with his lightning gun and then charge the Malcador on the left. The Crass Venator has come up into support, and then this squad of Thalax are still continuing to move through the buildings. They will shoot their lightning guns, move into the deployment zone, and hopefully score the Mechanicum some points. We've been really, really aggressive. Let's hope it pays off. At the end of the movement phase, we quickly resolved the ram attack from the Triaros against the Stormblade. A little bit more success this time. The ram attack caused a penetrating hit, which was resulted in a hull point, and the ram from the shock prow, the haywire attack from the shock prow caused another glancing hit. So the Stormblade is reduced now to 2 hull points. In return, though, the Stormblade, due to its bulk, caused a penetrating hit on the, a glancing hit on the Triaros. Kicking off Mechanicum turn 3 shooting. Unfortunately, due to a little bit of bad placement, the lightning guns from this Thalax unit could only see 2 Thalax onto that Malcador Infernus. They shot, and managed to cause a penetrating hit, which resulted in an immobilised result. That was really, really great news. This Thalax here fired again at the Malcador Infernus, but failed to penetrate its armour. But the Cryos Venator behind shot 4 shots in, 3 hits, but only 1 penetrate, despite the Ordnance special rule. Managed to cause an immobilised result, which is 2 hull points instead, because it was already immobilised. So that Malcador Infernus has now been reduced to 3 hull points. This Thalax will eventually charge it in the assault phase, hopefully clamping its melter bomb. The Styrex then fired its graviton gun at the Stormblade, hit and caused a glancing hit, reducing it to 1 final hull point. We then fired the Volkite Weapon of Doom at it, only getting 2 hits from 5, and we needed a 6 to glance the front of it, but unfortunately rolled a 1 and a 2. We can charge it. It is a bit tight, but we can orientate the base slightly, and we will charge it. I didn't really want to, just in case it explodes, and then it scatters back onto the Triaros of the Night. But anyway, we'll give it a whirl. The Triaros then fired its twin-linked Mauler bolt cannon into the trencher to try and finish it off. 3 hits, 2 wounds, but the cover save was made. The Volkite Sentinels then shot in, but failed to wound. Next to fire was the Myrmidon Destructors. They fired 20 shots into the Solar Auxilia unit in front of them, got 20 hits and 20 wounds. 2 Solar Auxilia were killed, and then the commander then started to tank them on him, which he did, but losing 1 wound in the process. The Deflagrate from the weapon then managed to pick off the commander, rolling ones for his rolling ones for his Artificer armor, unfortunately killing him, and 2 more Solar Auxilia. Due to the weapon being strength 6, it would have instant killed the Solar Auxilia commander, but he had Uncanny Survivor, so he was able to tank them quite efficiently. But unfortunately, he died. A leadership test was failed, and the Solar ran off the back of the board. That was quite a convincing shooting phase from the Myrmidon Destructors. The Macro Carrier opened up with its Mauler bolt cannon into the remaining Tarantula, getting 3 hits and 2 wounds, and thankfully the cover save was failed, and that took the last 2 wounds off the Tarantula. That was a good result there. And then I remembered that the Cryos Venator lined its shot up against the Stormblade, so I didn't have to charge the Knight. Luckily, got 1 hit and 1 glancing hit on the front of that Stormblade, and it exploded. Rolling a 1 on the damage, catastrophic table, and didn't cause very much damage at all. The surrounding vehicles were unharmed, and that took the Stormblade from the battlefield, which severely gave the advantage to the Mechanicum. Mechanicum turn 3 assault phase. The Myrmidons unfortunately don't have a target to charge. They had hoped to charge the Solars with Power Axe in front of them, but obviously they fled from the board, so that wasn't going to happen. But nevertheless, the Thalax on the right-hand side here tried to charge the Malcador Infernus that had taken damage already, just to try and finish it off, but failed. And then this unit of Thalax thrust forward 6 inches deeper into the Solar Auxilia lines. It's looking pretty reasonable. We've had an amazing round of shooting, and taking that Stormblade out was the icing on the cake. There is, however, a ton of infantry inside those Dracosans, and now the Knight is looking a little bit exposed because its flare shield is to the front, and the Solar have got the advantage by pouring multiple angles on it, avoiding the flare shield, hopefully. So we'll see what we can do.
Solar Auxilia movement phase turn 4, and the Solars are facing the inevitable. The Mechanicum are pouring into their deployment zone, and it looks like the battle is lost. But before they go down, they can do one thing: take out the Knight Styrex that has absorbed so much of their firepower. The Malcadors have spun round to bring their las cannon to bear. The Dracosans have spread out to try to make sure they can get shots that avoid its ionic flare shield. And all the way down the far end, the Dracosan with a twin-link las cannon also has a rear shot. Surely this is enough to take out the Knight, and at least the Solars can get a point for the price of failure. Solar Auxilia shooting phase turn 4, and the Malcador Infernus have opened well. They each managed to get a glancing hit on the front of the Knight, and they managed to get through its flare shield as well. They've stripped off 2 hull points. It has 3 remaining. The first Dracosan opened fire at point blank range with its demolisher, finally managing to have an effect on the knight, smashing through its flare shield to the front and inflicting a glancing hit. Sadly, the next Dracosan, although managing to hit, failed to glance or pen, but then we moved on to the Dracosan outside of the flare shield and that managed a penetrating hit. So the knight finally is down to 1 whole point remaining, and the Legate Commander's Dracosan has a shot on its rear with its twin-link las cannon. There's no flare shield, and we are going to roll it now. Here we go, this is the big moment. The last Dracosan with its twin-link las cannon has a shot on the rear of the pesky Knight Styrex. These are 4 to hit, twin-linked. Oh, that's what we like to see. Rear armour 12, strength 9. That's a glance, and that has finally done it. The knight that has absorbed about 15 demolisher shells has finally gone down, and the Solars can at least feel some satisfaction about that. Right, rolling for catastrophic damage on the Knight Styrex. Let's see where it scatters to first. Oh, it just collapses in. And let's see if we can get a good roll. That might take out the Triaros. It's a 5. That's a Titanic explosion. This could actually do some damage. The Titanic explosion from the destroyed Knight Styrex clips all 3 of the Solar Auxilia Dracosans to its front, but fortunately no damage was caused. It also hit the side armour of the Triaros armoured conveyor, but rolled a 1, so no damage was caused again. But the Solar Auxilia are still very happy to have taken that knight down. It did take the firepower of all of their remaining forces to do it though, and that means it's not looking good as we go into the Ordo Reductor's next turn.
Mechanicum turn 4 movement. This will be the final push to get the Mechanicum tanks and units into the enemy deployment zone. The Destructors will take out that Dracosan in combat. The Cryos and the Macrocarad will move and flat out in their turns to get into the enemy deployment zone. The Dracosan we can't do much about. We're going to, again, ram forward that Trios. It's the most ramming I've ever done in a game with Mechanicum ever. The Cryos Venator has come in just to get a side armour shot on that Dracosan, try and finish it off this turn. And the Thalax are moving in for the kill with their lightning guns and their melter bombs. At the end of the movement phase, the Trios armoured conveyor managed to put a glancing hit with its haywire attack from the shock prow, but the ram attack resulted in a penetrate, but only got a shaken result. So that's 2 whole points down on that Dracosan, which is brilliant news. Mechanicum turn 4 shooting phase. The lone Thalax fired at the side of that Malcador Infernus, but failed to hit. But the 4 Thalax behind fired into the Malcador Infernus and managed to cause 1 penetrating hit, reducing it to 5 hull points with only 1 remaining, and got a shaken result. Both units will charge in the assault phase. The Cryos Venator then opened up 4 shots into the side of the Dracosan, 2 penetrating hits, both went through, 1 was an immobilised and 1 was a shaken result, reducing that Dracosan to 1 hull point. The last part of the shooting phase was for the Cryos Venator to flat out 12 inches to firmly secure the Solar Auxilia deployment zone, and the Macrocarad flat out 6 inches. That poor Magos and his Secutors haven't had a sniff this whole game, but that doesn't matter. Next, we're going to move on to the assault with the Destructors into that Dracosan. Mechanicum turn 4 assault phase started with the Destructors charging the Lord Marshal's Dracosan. They had 16 attacks on the charge, 13 hit. They were strength 8. Managed to get 1 glance and 8 penetrates. Of course, took the transport out. It exploded, caused a wound on one of the Destructors that were already had a wound, and killed one of them. But that was a really good result. The 2 Thalax cohorts charged the Malcador Infernus, clamping their melter bombs in place. Now, because it's immobilised, they hit automatically, and the 5 melter bombs all penetrated and exploded the Malcador, taking its final hull point. It was a bit overkill, but it was just a necessity to get it done. 4 wounds were caused, But unbelievably, I rolled 3 sixes for their saves, which was brilliant, but then failed the feel no pain. So the Thalax on the end here just took a wound. I think all in all, that was a pretty amazing turn. We've really penned in the Solar Auxilia, but we're just seeing what they've got for their final turn. But I think the Mechanicum have got it.
Solar Auxilia, movement phase, turn 5. And as this is potentially the last turn for the Solars, they have accepted that they're probably not going to win this game on points, but they are still playing for pride. They want to just take out as many Mechanicum units as possible and deny the Auto Reductor as many victory points as possible. The Malcador Infernus hasn't moved. It has its las cannon trained at the side of the already damaged Triaros tank. Meanwhile, the Velatari Storm sections have finally deployed. This section here has all of its Volkites trained on the lone Thalax, and that will remove a scoring unit. Meanwhile, to their left, the command section have deployed from their Dracosan, which is training its Demolisher on the Triaros. This command section does have a Haywire grenade launcher and a melter gun, so they're hoping to add their fire to get the Secutari out of their Triaros so that the final squad of Velatari, which has also deployed, can cut down as many as possible. They've still got the supporting fire of their Dracosan as well. It's a grim situation for the Solars, but they're going to try to deal as much damage as possible. The Malcador Infernus managed 2 hits with its las cannons into the now vulnerable side of the Triaros. 2 hits and 2 pens, and it got a stunned and a weapon destroyed result. More importantly, it has reduced the Triaros to a single hull point remaining, and the command section are readying their grenade launcher with Tempest grenades. The Strategos used his Cognisignum to improve the ballistic skill of his own command section. That allowed the grenade launcher to hit with a Tempest grenade. Unfortunately, a 1 was rolled, and the Solar Auxilia thought the Triaros might survive. Fortunately, the melter gun stepped forward and managed a penetrating hit straight through the frontal armour, which has exploded the Triaros. We'll see what it does to the Secutari. As the mighty explosion ripped through the Triaros, 6 of the Secutari Peltas were killed, and the explosion also took out 1 of the Velataris Storm section. But at least now the Storm sections are preparing to fire at a target they can hurt. They're readying their Volkite chargers to take on the Secutari. The first squad of Velatari opened fire with their Volkite chargers. They had 20 shots, but it was quite disappointing. They only managed to kill 2, and 1 more fell to deflagrate. The second squad of Velatari opened fire at the lone Thalax. Despite having 18 shots, they only managed 9 hits and 4 wounds. 3 were saved by the Thalax's 4+ armour, and the last one was saved by its Feel No Pain. No damage at all. The command section's Dracosan armour transport took aim with its Demolisher at the Secutari Peltas, managed to land it right on target and blew 8 of the Secutari to pieces. The final Dracosan targeted its Demolisher cannon at the Krios tank and managed to catch the lone Thalax in the blast as well. The Thalax was torn to pieces, but thanks to its flare shield, the Krios tank only took a glancing hit. Then at the end of the phase, the last 3 remaining Secutari Peltas took their morale check for casualties. They rolled a 10 and they have fallen back 7 inches. And that is it for turn 5 for the Solar Auxilia. They have finally inflicted some damage on the Auto Reductor, but unfortunately it still looks like it's too little too late.
Mechanicum turn 5, movement phase. At the start of the phase, the Secutari failed their leadership once again and fell back a further 7 inches. So that's a little bit of a shame. However, they are not needed as the Trios armour conveyor on the left-hand flank here moved into the deployment zone of the Solar Auxilia, as did the Myrmidon Destructors. The Macro Carried also moved in within 12, but reorientated itself so it can get the irradiation engines to fire on that rearmost Solar Auxilia squad. The Krios Venator also did the same. It looks like a little Mechanicum parking lot here. And then finally, the Krios. I could have moved the Krios into the enemy deployment zone over on this side, but I decided just to keep it out so it can draw a bead onto that last Dracosan and take the final hull point. Hopefully, the Thalax have moved forward 6 inches. They're an inch away from that Malcador Infernus, and they will shoot their lightning guns and then charge in the assault phase. And that should be enough. Mechanicum, turn 5 shooting. The macro-carried Explorator fired its 2 irradiation engines and the Mauler bolt cannon into the Solar Auxilia section there in front of them, the Velatari, and cut 8 of them down. They failed their leadership and fell back 4 inches towards their own deployment zone. The Cryos Venator fired 4 shots into the side of that Dracosan. Only 2 hits and 2 penetrates. James did get a 5-foot cover save because of the Velatari in front, but one was passed, one was failed, and that last hull point was enough to wreck that Dracosan. So some good point scoring there. And then finally, the Thalax opened up with 4 of their lightning guns. 2 hits, but failed to penetrate the sidearm of that Malcador. They will have to do it in assault phase now. Mechanicum, turn 5 assault phase. The Thalax charged in with their 5 melter bombs, hit 5 times, thanks to the vehicle not moving prior, so they automatically hit, and caused 1 glance and 4 penetrating hits, and that was enough to destroy it as a 6 was rolled on the chart. It did explode and wounded all of the Thalax, but their armor save was passed, but it did cut down 3 of the Solar Auxilia in the explosion. We will now roll to see if the game continues for another turn. Here's the roll. The Solar Auxilia are going to roll it. See what happens. Oh, and it's a 1. That is the end of the game. I think we know the result, but we are nonetheless going to tot up the hutch points, and then James and I will have a bit of a debrief about the game. Wow, what a game. James, I bet you were pleased it ended at turn 5, right?
Yeah, ouch.
I have to say, that was a bit of a... I think the official term to use is a bit of a smash fest.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I thought the Mechanicum, they just rolled over the Solar Auxilia without slowing down or changing gear. It was an absolute dominant performance from the Auto Reductor.
Oh, it was a bit tricky. I think that was a deserved win for me from the World Eaters Raven Guard game.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, God. Yeah. I think the star of the show, we've brought back 2 models, but the star of the show has to be the flare shield on the Mechanicum tanks, and the fact that Auto Reductor makes some scoring as well. I think that was probably the star of the show. Really.
Absolutely, and the ionic flare shield on the Knight Styrex was... I think that was the deciding factor for me, really. I just unleashed so much firepower and he just marched on, not taking any damage. Crazy.
I must admit, the last time I used a Knight was where I had an Acheron and the one with the Lancer had the Cerastus chassis. I had those about 2-3 years ago, and I loved playing with them. But I gave them up for the Cybernetica list and never ran them in the end. But really, really great to run a Knight in this game. Loved it. You forget how cool they are.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They look awesome on the table. And the Styrex is... I say with the ionic flare shield, with its nice sort of mix of weapons, the Volkite of Doom. It's a great Knight.
I was about to mention the Volkite of Doom, which neither of us can pronounce. So please help us out on that one if you can. But yeah, you don't really see these. It's the Majera and the Styrex you don't see very often in games. I love the aesthetic of them. With the helmet and the faceplate and the 2 guns and the carapace in particular are really cool. But anyway, let's move on. It's good to see the Knight after all. Victory points. It was a bit of a whitewash, I'm not going to lie. The Solar Auxilia managed to score 1 victory point for the price of failure for taking that Knight out. Yeah,
it was satisfying in the end. Yeah, the first three shooting phases, I think it was 9 Demolisher shells, 2 Stormblade shots, a couple of las cannon hits, and not a single hull point dealt out of that. So... painful.
It is tricky. It's very, very tricky. That -2, as we said earlier on with the flare shield, reduced that strength 10 to strength 8, which really, really helped out. Anyway, Mechanicum, they got 9 points for Shatter Strike, and each tank was worth 2, and the Thalax unit was worth another 2, and the Destructors were worth 1. James made a really great point, though, at the end, just before we finished, just saying I should have got the Magos out with his Secutors, and that would have been another, I guess they're denial each, so another 2 extra. But anyway, didn't do that. It sounds arrogant, but I didn't need to. And that sounds really... It also saved a bit of time as well, because we're here quite late this evening filming the rest of this game. So anyway, a point for attrition, Warlord, and price of failure, which took the Mechanicum to a lovely 9, 10, 11, 12 versus 1 for the Solar. So yeah, it was a bit of a wild ride.
It was, absolutely. As I say, the key factor for me was throwing all the firepower of the Solar into the Knight, I changed my strategy during deployment. My original strategy was to let the auto-reductor go first, to have the last turn to do a sneaky dash or something like that into the auto-reductor's deployment zone. When I saw how the Mechanicum had deployed, I thought I've got no room to advance here unless I start knocking things out. So seized the initiative, which went well, and then it was all downhill from there. My fire was just completely ineffective, really. Killed a few Thalax, but yeah, it was only really until turn 5 that any casualties were inflicted at all on the auto-reductor.
Yeah. My plan, if James had deployed first, I would have deployed solely on one side completely, and then which nullified a bit of shooting. But then also what that would have done is that would have presented my side armour a little bit more, which probably would have helped James, but it would have wasted a bit of time him moving over to come and shoot me, but then I would have been clumped up. So I think in the end, James making the Mechanicum go first was probably the best answer, really.
Yeah, I mean, it could have gone, if the knight had gone down turn 2 or 3, I think we would have had a game on. Yeah. But it was so resilient, it just wouldn't go down. And I threw, I think, every shot in my army during turn 4 at it to finally take it down. Yeah. But yeah, it was painful for the Solars.
Sometimes games just genuinely go that way. Yeah. You know, you just get so fixated on something and it never dies, or this particular mechanic doesn't work, and it's such a shame. But I thought it was quite cool seeing that massive wall of armour just speeding across the Solar as fast as possible, you know. I thought that was quite cool. I'm very rarely aggressive like that, but I thought, well, you know, it's really weird not playing with your own army. You kind of try something you don't normally do because you're so protective of your own army. Yeah. And when it's someone else's, you just think, "Oh, I'll give it a go."
That's it, yeah.
So it's quite a liberating moment, really.
Oh, great, yeah. So in the Mechanicum, I think they showed just how resilient their vehicles are. Yeah. Not that they took much fire, thanks to the nice direct, but when they did, it just all bounced off. That is a really, really strong auto-reductor list.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We might see more of that in the future. But James, you've brought back your HQ.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit unlucky, really. Jumped out with his bodyguards, hid behind the barricades. I thought he'd be all right to take a charge, or survive to take a charge because of the 2-up cover saves, but then the Myrmidon Destructors, they are a hideous unit. Although he rolled a lot of ones. But yeah, him and his bodyguard were just cut down in short order by the Myrmidons contemptuously. Oh, God. And the rest of his bodyguard ran as soon as he went down. So I thought I'd bring him back. It's just a shame he didn't get to at least have a go at the Myrmidons with his Paragon Blade.
I think the Myrmidons are a bit too good. That preferred enemy onto hits and to wounds is just too good.
Yeah, especially against Solar, who aren't that resilient, as I say. And it goes to show they inflicted so many wounds that despite having a 2-up cover save, it still decimated the squad, or more worse than that, cut down half of them.
Yes. It was a really exciting game. I really enjoyed it. Not just because the Mechanicum won, but I'm also happy Mechanicum won, of course. But I really do think it was great having these two mechanised forces just go hard at it together, straight at each other. I thought visually, I just thought it was fantastic.
I really wished I'd have moved forward a bit more off my baseline, but I just couldn't see an avenue of advance that was open, unfortunately. That's why I thought I'd needed to blast one, where it just didn't pan out. Yeah,
it was just like we said, it's just a bit too resilient. But anyway, I thought it was a really great game. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'm not sure what we've got planned for our next game, but we'll think of something.
Yeah. We'll come up with something good, no doubt.
We'll no doubt as well bring back that snowboard. I've got a game filming at the weekend. I've got a guy from America coming over just to film a game on the channel, which is unbelievable. He's got Emperor's Children, and he'll be playing a guy called Peter Cuthbert, who we've seen on the channel before. I think I played Peter the last time he was on with his Iron Hands. So we're going to have a Emperor's Children Iron Hands matchup, which we're really excited to see. I think we use the same board because I think it looked quite good. And
I thought it was a great board, mate. Yeah,
great. And I might buy some more salt tomorrow just to build up some more snow drifts. I think on the side of those rocks. Anyway, that's a bit of admin which I shall take care of tomorrow. But I really, really hope you've enjoyed this game. We did have a blast filming it. We filmed it over 2 nights, so hopefully you can't tell. Maybe we were flagging a little bit yesterday afternoon, and so we picked up a little bit. But I really hope you've enjoyed it. I have taken a ton of photos from the game. So please go to the Facebook page when this game is released and have a look there. We'd love to hear your comments. James, thank you so much for the game.
Oh, thank you, mate. Thank you.
And we'll see you in the next game very soon.